listening to the Project Ignite podcast,
where real digital entrepreneurs reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies to help you ignite and grow your online business.
ProjectIgnite.com. Your digital business starts here.
Now, here's your host, Gehl.
Welcome again to the Project Ignite podcast, a podcast, designed to skip all that hype and the BS and the fluff and just bring you real entrepreneurs, real experts that are sharing actual strategies that you can apply to help grow your digital business. That's what we're all about. This is your host, Gehl, and today we're going to be diving deep into influencer marketing, which has been growing in popularity massively over the last couple years. In fact, I remember not the last affiliate summit, but the affiliate summit before that, which I attend every year, the big one in Las Vegas. I mean, the whole theme was influencer marketing. It's become really mainstream, and it's a topic that I have a lot of interest in, and really over the last couple of years. And one of the reasons is because in one of my businesses where I have numerous health products and health brands, I really dove into influencer marketing, and I spent multiple six figures on influencer marketing. And what I can tell you is initially I lost a whole bunch of money. And even today, I would still consider myself influencer marketing novice. And so that's why I'm looking forward to our conversation today with today's guest. And he's the author of the recently published book called Influencer Marketing Strategy. And he's the host of the podcast Influence, the global podcast shining a spotlight on influencer marketing. And really just a trainer of all things influencer marketing. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome all the way from across the Atlantic Ocean, Gordon Glenister, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure, Derek. Lovely to see you.
Fantastic. All right. So let's start where I always start. And that is, how did you become this influencer guy? What brought you to this today?
This space. Yeah. Well, it's really fascinating, actually, because I used to be the Director General or Chief Exec, if you like, of the British Promotional Merchandise Association for 11 years. And then in 2018, I left that industry, an industry that I'm very familiar with. A lot of people know who I am. And I started out with my own membership consultancy. And it's like anything new. You start out with people that you know, connections that you already have. And one of them was Andrew Cantor, who's the group CEO of the Branded Content Marketing Association, and we were having a chat in a hotel in London. And I said to Andrew, there's this massive growth in influencers, content creators, influencer marketing agencies. There's a lot of media attention around this, but who's representing these individuals? And we realized there was no association or representative body. So, and because my background has always been in associations, to cut a long story short, we launched the first association for influencers, bloggers, influencer marketing platforms in July 2019. So that, of course, extends today. And I have also, at the same time, I launched my own podcast, never even listened to a podcast before, and ended up doing one. And almost around the same time, I met actually an exhibition when we could go and see live events. The publishers, Coke and Page. And I just chatted to them there, and I said to them, is there an opportunity for us to have a book on influencer marketing, colloquially? And they realized that they didn't have anything in their portfolio. So it's almost as though there were three things that came together. The creation of the influencer marketing channel at the BCMA, the podcast, and the opportunity to write this book. So and now within a space of 2 or 3 years, I'm a sort of reasonable, leading authority in that space. Writing the book, I actually wrote it, but probably for many of your listeners that may have a little knowledge of influencer marketing, but not a lot. And you know what? I was in exactly the same boat. So I thought, well, I'm going to write this not for somebody that is literally spent years and years in the space and understand it from back to front. I thought I'm going to write it with the view of trying to help people navigate this. So I interviewed about 75 odd people from the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I've also got a directory of influencer platforms. I've got a glossary. So I actually wanted to try and create something that was an A to Z, if you will, of the space. And I met some amazing people in that journey. So I guess that's how I came to be where I'm at now.
Got it. I'm always fascinated to hear how people get to the, I mean, there's always a pathway and there's always a confluence of events that sometimes they're planned, sometimes they're just totally not, right?
But you know what? It's interesting, Derek, is I never planned to do this.
Yeah.
Never planned to do this. I sort of fell into it because of an opportunity that arose, and then just one thing led to another.
You know, and that's interesting for all the listeners here, because I mean, one of the things I do in one of my businesses is I help people start online businesses. And people always say to me, well, I don't have any ideas and I don't know what I'm going to do for my business. And I always say to people, well, look, just start doing something. And even if that something isn't your ultimate passion or dream, by doing something, you're going to open up doors and opportunities that you would have never come across had you just stayed stationary waiting for the perfect idea to come up. And that is one of the most common entrepreneurial journeys I hear is, well, I started doing this because, you know, this is what I did. And then because I built this knowledge, it opened this door and this door and it all. And I think, again, you're just a perfect example of that.
Yeah. But I think there are some lessons in what you've just said there. Entrepreneurs can so easily be drawn into all sorts of shiny new things because of the way that potentially their customers are coming in. And one of the strengths of influencers is actually being true to their alignments, true to their values, true to their focus, and indeed to their niche. Because if they are true to that, then people, I would say, what is a brand? Is, you know, a brand is what somebody says about you when you're not in the room.
Yes.
And isn't it true? You know,
totally.
And that's why, I mean, I'll tell you what I've been fascinated about in this journey is I've met some amazing content creators that have blown me away. They really, really have. And most of them are half my age.
Yeah.
You know, the average age of a social media influencer is 28.
Yeah.
The percentage of them that are women is huge.
Oh, for sure.
And what that's meant is it's created a whole flurry of female entrepreneurs, which I find amazing, really exciting. That suddenly, and the amount of people that say to me, oh, well, what do I need to do to become an influencer? And I would say, start with a passion, start with something that you feel really you have a knowledge about, that you have a desire to impart knowledge. Don't start with the view that, oh, I want to do something that's going to make me a lot of money because I see these other influencers. A lot of those have been doing it for quite a long period of time. And it is about being consistent with the approach of content creation, knowledge, advice, and entertainment.
Okay, so now to dig into this, let's start with the state of the influencer market today, because it's been evolving and really it's been growing up. Going back even a few years, it was so much the Wild West. And I see it starting to grow up and, more systems and platforms and companies legitimizing it. Where do we sit today in terms of influencer marketing?
So it is, just to give you a sense of size, in 2016, it was reputed to be worth an industry value of about 1.6 billion. So here we are now in 2021. And we're looking at around 14 billion. And that has been a meteoric rise so quickly. And actually, the pandemic has served influencer marketing really well, because lots of organizations that have had to revisit their marketing budget, their marketing strategy, and now increasing their spend in influencer marketing.
Mhm.
largely because a lot of their consumers are online as well and are taking note. I mean, the level of engagement during the pandemic of influencers was huge,
Yeah.
because there's lots more people that were discovering these individuals where they hadn't seen them before.
Mhm.
We're shopping more online than ever before, and of course we've got lots of lifestyle, fashion, and beauty influencers that are helping shoppers through that journey, if you will. So I think, yeah, there's been a meteoric rise, and of course we've seen platforms like TikTok just completely
Oh,
blow the stats off
through
the
the
off
roof.
the page.
Yeah.
2 billion plus downloads, biggest download app in 2020, and I think in 2019. We've more recently seen the success of Clubhouse and how that has grown using voice technology and
Mhm.
building trust through listening to somebody. Podcasters, of course, have exploded as well. So there's more competition now for influencers, which means that brands have a choice as to who they want to work with. But and you're right, there's lots of influencer platforms that are out there. We estimate around 1,200, and that's grown hugely from
Yeah.
the early days. So that all they're doing is catering for a need that's out there. Because actually trying to find influencers is still one of the hardest parts of the process.
Well, yeah, and that's I guess one of the first questions is, how do you find, and better yet, how do you pick influencers? Because as I said in my intro there, I believe in learning from the school of hard knocks sometimes. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I went out and I spent a whole bunch of money on some different health influencers and fitness influencers, and on paper they all looked the same, but the results were massively different depending on uh, the influencer. You look and they say, okay, well, their reach is the same. They're very similar. Why is one so much better than the other? And it's been so hard to figure out, how do you choose the right influencers for your business? How do you find these people?
Yeah, well, it's not. It's a skill, I think.
Oh, it is.
I sometimes say to people, if you're looking at investing quite a bit of money in this, then honestly, don't do it yourself. Work
Yeah.
with a specialist influencer marketing agency that will actually hold your hand through this process.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also influencer marketing discovery tools, which are effectively big sourcing sites for you to go and source these individuals. What they will do is provide you with a lot of information around demographic, gender type, because what you need to make sure fundamentally is that you are picking an influencer that matches your target audience. And where people make mistakes is they don't do enough of their due diligence. They really don't. And I mean, even for example, you talked about health fitness influencer. You could have a great health fitness influencer who's got, I don't know, 100,000 followers. But if you didn't know their demographic of their follower base, you could find that 80% of that audience was in Europe. And if you're a US brand that can only buy products in, let's just say it's not a health, let's just say it's a restaurant
Mm-hmm.
in your neck of the woods, then actually what you want to do is to make sure that you've got an influencer that is, Vancouver based,
Sure.
that actually is food and drink orientated. You've
Mm-hmm.
got to make sure that you do the right attributes. The best way of looking at it is, how would you hire an employee? And if you think about the steps that you take with a resume or a CV, you do a lot more diligence through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say if you were doing it on your own, you just wanted to start small. You could have a look at, let's just say, an Instagram. You would look at put some hashtags in to the search. And let's just say it was a restaurant, a vegan restaurant. So you might put in hashtag vegan. You might put in vegan influencer.
Mm-hmm.
And what will happen is, through that process, a number of influencers would come up in that area. And then what you can start to then do is have a look at, yes, their profiles, their aesthetic. Does it match the sorts of values that you feel comfortable with? And bearing in mind, you haven't reached out to them at the moment. You're just doing your selection. Have a look at the engagement rate. Have a look at the perhaps the 10 last posts. Look at the comment ratio and what their followers are saying about them. You know, is it all positive? Is it all? Are they getting back to them? Are they responsive to their audience? Are they using, for example, affiliate links? So are they very focused on not just brand awareness? Are they focused around, you know, generating sales because they're used to working in that environment? What's the content quality like? That's really important. Are they using video or photography? There's an argument that says sometimes there are some influencers that create amazing content but don't necessarily have huge audiences. And some of these will be around the micro and nano level, yeah, so much smaller bases. And there's a lot to be said for considering these individuals. Often they're photographers or videographers, yeah, because so sometimes brands have actually said, well, we don't necessarily need you to be part of the promotion of the content. We just want you to be a content creator. And what we'd like to do is, once you've created that content, we'd like to then use that on our social media channels, on our website, because it's amazing. Yeah. So that's a different relationship that you might have. Now that's just, obviously we just talked about Instagram there. You know, there are other platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter. You want to have a look at the types of conversation that are going on your key subject area. And of course, you can do that through analytics tools. Of course, there's loads of them that are out there. You can even do just a Google search. You know, you mentioned health influencers. You could just see who's, you know, the top 20 health influencers or vegan influencers. Somebody else has done that search and profile already. But you need to do that. Now, once you've found them, of course, that's only step one. Step two is reaching out to them, and that is also an art.
So, and before we get into that, because that was my next question, I've just got a couple follow-up questions there. In terms of, you said micro or nano. I mean, what is a nano influencer versus a micro influencer versus what are the other levels that we are talking about?
So typically a nano influencer would be somebody that is under 10,000 followers on Instagram. I mean, you know what? It does vary from, you know, everybody's got a different definition of it.
Okay.
A micro influencer is typically between 10 and 100,000. And then you've got mid-tier up to 500,000. And then you've got mega.
The Kardashians of the world. And so
and actually the growth in influencer marketing is at the smaller level, micro, because the level of engagement there is let's be honest, if you had such a huge audience and you've got like 4,000 likes or 458 comments, how on earth are you going to be able to comment and like and go back to every single individual? It's a lot harder, and that's why some of the bigger influencers, of course, have got teams. Yeah, so they don't just do this on their own. They've got actual social media teams that actually help them connect with their audience.
Sure. So this brings me to the question that is how important is number of followers versus the other attributes, because I know most people, and this was me initially, our first instinct is, okay, let's go find, look, how many followers do they have, right? And you know, pricing was based on, you know, audience size, which, you know, obviously we know can be propped up. So when you're looking for influencers, how much weight do you put into follower size versus the other attributes?
Well, obviously, that was very much the key metrics, is follower size. I'm not saying it still hasn't got its place. Of course it has. But engagement is far more important now. Because what you want to do is get return on that investment, return on that profile. I mean, the other thing I think is really important is when you're thinking about running a campaign with an influencer, is you've got to have a set of objectives. What are you trying to achieve? Do you want to create greater reach and brand awareness? Do you want to create, sales? Because if you're going to create a sales funnel, there's a different approach to doing that. You're going to need to perhaps consider affiliate links that you can attribute back from that influencer. So if it's like a fashion influencer for a clothing brand, what you can do is just say her name is Louise. You could have Louise 20, and that's what's really good about that is you can attribute that directly back to her specific campaign. And if you've got, of course, 20 or 30 influencers or even more, what you're able to do is to track the performance of these individuals right the way through the campaign. And that's what I love about influencer marketing. Unlike like a billboard ad or a television, once it's gone, it's gone. You can actually optimize some of the content throughout the process. What you'll find is that when you've run, nothing's perfect, by the way, Derek. You'll find that you will make some mistakes. But remember, the influencer wants the campaign to work as much as you, because if it doesn't work, it feels flat to their audience as well.
So here's the question I have is, and I think a lot of people go into influencer marketing. They expect this influencer, they're going to pay them X amount of dollars. That influencer is going to post the product, endorse a product, and they're looking for an ROI right out of the gate. And my experience has been that is the wrong expectation to have.
100%. So I think, and that's why there's been a huge growth with ambassador programs, which is effectively trying to build a relationship with the influencer. So if you think about it, the audience of an influencer, if they're seeing suddenly a new product they've never seen before, it's the same thing as seeing an advert on television for the first time. The audience hasn't got an opportunity at that moment in time to understand a little bit more about what that product is. So if they become like a Boohoo ambassador or a particular brand ambassador, what the audience is starting to do is to get acclimatized to that brand through that influencer. And what the clever ones will do is they'll create excitement. In 5 days time, I'm going to be bringing to you the latest XYZ unboxing videos, really creating an excitement so that it builds the anticipation of the audience. Good influencers are not just salespeople, and it's a mistake to think that they are just literally salespeople. 65% of them will reject inbound emails or direct messages, and that might surprise some of you to know that. And the reason they do that is not because they can't be bothered, it's because actually they want to work with brands, not just the brands that pay them a certain amount of money. They want to work with brands that resonate with their audience, because actually there's nothing worse for them in almost selling out to them. They've taken a long while to build up this credible, authentic, engaged audience. They want to provide a value exchange. And even if it's a gifted campaign, you've still got to be thinking about what's in it for the influencer. And this is a big mistake that lots of companies make. They just assume that they're just going to go out and promote their product. And I'll tell you another little tip that I say to people. If you've got somebody that you really like, you really respect, you want to work with, I'll tell you what, don't reach out to them to start with. Start liking some of their content. Start commenting on it. And then when you've done that and you've got a bit of a taster for what they're doing, when you send that email outreach, you make reference to it. I've been following you for last month. I've been really impressed by the type of content and the level of engagement that you're creating for your follower base. That's why we would love to work with an individual like you. See how different the style of
Mhm.
message is to somebody that says any influencers want to work with us. It just makes it look like it's anything for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, just for the listeners here, one of the things to take away here is and this is something you guys have probably heard me talk about before, and that is sales attribution. One of the things we talked about here is, if you're expecting them to post and you're going to get an immediate ROI that's made back your investment and cash in your pocket, probably not going to happen. But it's I don't want to use the word branding. It's a bit of a branding play in some sense, but you also, I think, people have to remember is people consume social on mobile devices, but that's not necessarily where they make their purchase as well. So this is, something I deal with every single day because I spend every month hundreds of thousands of dollars on media buys, and there's only so much that directly tracks, but you have to look at your overall brand lift. So I think when people are investing in this kind of a marketing initiative, you can't just look at the direct ROI, the direct attributable sales, because that's not going to give you a full picture of it. And again, this is something that I see in the entire marketing industry, in media buying, in influencer marketing. And we have people that are like, oh, I ran it, I tracked clicks to purchase, and it wasn't profitable. Well, it was, but they were coming through all these different channels now. And if anything, this is one of the biggest challenges that faces the industry right now is actually tracking and sales attribution and channel attribution, which is
Really.
don't even get me started on that because
But then, actually, just to add to that, I'll tell you where a lot of organizations will do is they'll use influencer marketing as part of an overall strategy.
sure,
So they
yes,
won't necessarily use it in isolation. They'll use it as part of an overall brand launch. So
hmm
they're doing all manner of different things.
and
And
no, go ahead, sorry.
on one thing, you remember I mentioned content creation.
Yeah,
Has been interesting is starting to see, like influencer imagery on bus shelters, on billboards.
yeah.
That just proves the gravitas and the weight of some of these influencers, that they are appearing not just online, but on other forms of media.
Yeah, and this is I'm glad you said that. I mean, it's influencer marketing. I think for anybody, it's not going to be your only strategy. It's got to be a part of a much bigger picture. And I think one of the big wake ups for me was, you know, when the influencer posts, that's all good and well, but then it's leveraging what they've posted in your marketing to add credibility to your brand. And
Mm.
that's where the long-term value with a lot of these influencers is, particularly if we can go out and target their audiences or make deals with them so we can boost posts and do stuff. And all right, okay, so this is interesting. So now as we go down the rabbit hole, I mean, we've talked about how to find influencers and what to look for. And obviously, engagement is probably the biggest metric that we're going to look at, because if you have 1 million followers but nobody's responding, then it's meaningless, right?
Right.
So the next question that most people ask when they first get into influencer marketing start with, where do I find influencers? Who's the right influencer? And then that's followed with, how much do I pay them?
Yeah, so that differs on lots of things,
Yes.
and also sometimes you can, because I think there are some people that think they should be gifted. They just run gifted campaigns.
Hmm.
I mean, there are different metrics on broad follower numbers, but I would say that everything's negotiable because it's things that are negotiable. For example, is are you going to use their content on your other media, for
Yeah.
example? So rights issues. It might mean that if they're going to be at home creating some content, that's very different from them actually going out and trying to find a location
Yeah.
and bring in a photographer. So typically it's more money for a video shoot. then what else can affect it?
Well,
Uh,
let's just to give the audience some kind of a range. Let's just say a micro influencer, sub 10,000 with decent engagement. What are we looking at for a post on Instagram with a link? Are we talking $200? Are we talking
yeah.
$10,000?
Oh no, we're talking lower numbers. Yeah,
Yeah.
$200 or so. Yeah. It's not. This is the thing. It's not as expensive as perhaps people think.
Yeah.
And so what you can do is you can offer them maybe you could offer them a discount that they could get like a commission link to your product.
Mm-hmm.
One thing you could offer their audience a discount as well. So if you look at your product offering, and you could say, right, there's only so much in the cake here, and you could offer them a certain amount of money to create the content. So overall, because I am an absolute fan of paying influencers, because you are buying into a lot of skill. These individuals aren't just somebody that take a picture and post it. I mean, I've been around a lot of them. They are, sometimes it's 80 pictures to get the one.
Yeah.
Well, that's the equivalent of a professional photographer. They're videographers, they're editors, they're website designers, they are, audience builders. They're multi-skilled, a lot of these people. And if you were to think of what it would take to create a photo shoot for a television advert, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. And yet, for a very small percentage of this, you are getting, a smart individual. The other thing I would say, Derek, is that you can include the influencer as part, rather than saying, right, use it as a media buy, because they hate that, by the way. They hate being just brought in when everything has been done. Oh, here's our campaign. This is what's going on. We'll just use a few influencers to amplify it. You are wasting a huge skill set there. And it's definitely worth considering, if you're serious about influencers, is thinking about reaching out to them with a project concept idea without everything being, watertight. And the reason I say that is because sometimes you can be sort of blown away by the possibilities of what they can do. And that's why when you're using a bunch of influencers that are, yes, within a niche, but slightly, there's a niche within a niche, isn't there?
Yeah.
And what they can do sometimes is bring you just different types of audience that you hadn't thought about. You can get incredible research and insight findings. If they were to, for example, giving their audience an opportunity to buy that item or this item, or what color do you think, you can run competitions with the audience, challenges. I mean, TikTok challenges create enormous engagement. So it's not just about promoting a product, it's creating a social media buzz. I mean, I was actually speaking to somebody recently on my podcast, and they were talking about a sugarcane product that was entirely created with the brand in Brazil. For 5 days, they flew the individuals over to this hotel. And during that whole process, the influencers were not only coming up with ideas and concepts and brand ideas, but they were, at the same time, they were sharing some of this thought with their audience. So you imagine the real-time insights that brand was getting. And when the brand comes to relaunch, as it did, whoosh, you've got all of those engaged consumers that are ready. They were part of the process.
Well, yeah, they feel like they were part of it. They're still,
Correct.
they're bought into it. Oh, that's fat. And as you were talking about that, I was thinking back, I'm like, when I think back to a lot of the influencer stuff I've done, I've made exactly that mistake. I've got campaigns and I'm like, okay, let's bring in the influencers to bolster the campaigns. When in reality, getting their creative input would have been far more beneficial, and they would have been far more bought into the campaign as well.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. See, that's why I like having these conversations, because it always gets me thinking about these. I get so much value out of these. That's fantastic. All right. So now we've talked about where to find them. We've talked about kind of what to pay for them, but what can you ask them for? What are the kind of things you can expect from an influencer? Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, they're just going to post on Instagram or they're going to post on Facebook.
Oh, tons of stuff. So you can do, obviously, you can think about Instagram posts and stories and reels.
Hmm.
Um, you can actually employ them to run your social media campaign. They're called social media takeovers.
Hmm.
So that's a really cool thing to do. You can do an Insta or a Facebook live. So you do they're doing it with their followers, but they're asking or on a particular subject. It could be aligned to the brand, but not totally on point.
Sure.
So, for example, Dove, the brand
Yeah.
Dove,
Yeah.
which is yeah.
Yeah.
So they've got a real big thing about Body Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's a much bigger talking point. So what they try and do is get their influencers to really talk about body positive subjects. Of
Hmm.
course, that brings in a much bigger conversation,
Oh, yeah.
and and then people know it's associated with Dove. They don't even have to mention the brand
Yeah.
because it's intrinsically linked. The other thing, of course, is other live streams. That's live stream shopping.
Hmm.
So they can do. I mean, if you think about the shopping channels that we've all grown up with and we've seen them on TV, but influencers do it on another level. They
Yeah.
make it really exciting with a buzz and all of that. So I love that. Promoting apps, download apps is been very popular. Podcast collaborations,
Hmm.
so that either you come on their show or vice versa, or that you create a whole branded podcast with the influencers in place. You can invite them to as a keynote speaker or as part of a panel that you are. So if you're the brand creating the conference, yeah, getting influencers along will. I mean, I was doing an event at the B2B Marketing Expo in London 2-3 years ago, and because we had an influencer that I was interviewing, we had the biggest audience by a country mile. It was
Hmm.
huge. But so she drove more visitors to the show because she was there. So that was good. And just promoting event ticket sales and stuff like that. So if you're, as I say, running an event and you want to do
Hmm.
it like a discount code to the tickets, getting instant feedback on a launch. So, guys, what do you reckon? Blue dress or yellow dress, or
Yeah.
something like that. Doing reviews, like if you were a hotel, a destination, or something, it could be reviews. Crisis management, like COVID, for example, we saw, big governments embrace influencers, which they'd never done before because they weren't able to get to that younger audience. And all of a sudden, the world's washing their hands. But they're
Hmm.
washing their hands not because the government has said so, but because their preferred influencer is
Yeah.
doing so.
Yep.
Um, so there's just a few ideas. Yeah.
That was awesome. That was awesome. I don't know if you follow much of what's going on in China in terms of marketing and stuff like this.
Do.
But over the last few years, I've been expanding some stuff into China, and it's been a heck of a learning curve because obviously they have their own version of the internet there. And, there's lots of times I look there for almost the future of what's going to happen here.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that has taken off like a rocket in China, especially during COVID, was the big shopping platforms there now have launched where people can go and do their own live streams. And there are now literally, we have the home shopping networks where you go on TV and see the one guy, but now
Exactly.
you can follow on all these platforms all these influencers that have massive followings. And basically all it is now is a live infomercial for products where, somebody you like, value their, and they review makeup and stuff like that. In fact, one of their influencers on one of the streaming platforms, pretty sure it was on Tmall, during was it one of the big sales days, off her channel alone, directly attributed, was it 80 or 90 million dollars in sales?
God.
To
I
the
mean,
point, it's
that,
incredible.
that is amazing.
And so when I look at this influencer, I'm waiting. I'm going, is it ever going to happen where an Amazon or an eBay or one of those opens up these streaming channels where people can get on, build their followings, and then directly tie it to commerce, right? I mean, I think right now we're seeing Shopify and TikTok talking to each other. And, is there a way to integrate more TikTok into the Shopify e-commerce world? But I mean, one of the things that I think is fascinating is where this has the potential to go to create a more direct connection to the actual buying platforms. And what are your thoughts on that?
No, well, funny enough, I'm writing an article about almost this subject. Influencers are the new retailers.
Yeah.
That's effectively what I'm talking about. I'm also fascinated by what's happening in China. In fact, I remember an advert being posted a little while ago from Alibaba and Amazon, both looking for 100,000 influencers globally. So, they almost put, just when the world was scrabbling around trying to find a work, these two big platforms would do it, because e-commerce is exactly where it's all going because of the amount of people that are now online than ever before. And I think, I do wonder if it has impact for the events industry. I wonder if it has impact for other sorts of, because what we're now getting is that you can go and buy something at 2 a.m. You can literally look at your iPhone and have a look there. And even if it's not on live stream, but it's just clickable links with great video content. And this is what I love about some of the technology now. You go into a shop and you just get a whole load of rails, don't you? And you get the odd mannequin there. But literally online, I've got somebody giving me all sorts of different styles, all sorts of different looks. I've got video transitions, which almost create my mood board. And in fact, there's technology now which enables me to upload my sizes and imagery, and before I know it,
I can
bingo.
see, yeah, for sure.
But the other big area of expansion is co-creation of products. So in the early years, of course, influencers were effectively brand advocates. Now, because of the size of some of their audience, they're thinking, well, just a minute, I can do this myself.
Sure.
So we're now getting brands that have been created entirely for influencers,
which is interesting, because that's not new in the sense that Nike's been doing this for decades, but with giant sports figures,
like Jordan,
Air Jordans, Tiger
Absolutely.
Woods, stuff like that. But now
Exactly.
it's like we're now able to do it on a little bit more micro scale.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And that's so even people with 50,000 followers could potentially, if they had a strong niche, have their own brand because they've got a customer base. This is the point. This is what I think is so amazing. So some of the big China, because a lot of products, of course, are manufactured in China. So the designers have been reaching out to influencers and say, look, well, why don't we create your own label? We can make it. You're just buying into a ready-made audience. And the influencer, of course, is so much more engaged when, rather than making a small percentage of the sale, they're making a significant percentage of the sale, but it's also helping perpetuate their brand message more. So we're going to see lots more license deals, and we're going to see a lot more co-created products, because it's exactly China that has led the way in this area for a while. Things like on-demand print products, we're going to start to see more of that. Merch, greater percentage of merch coming through, because it's almost like same things that were happening to pop stars are now happening to influencers. I was at VidCon. VidCon exhibition, which you may know is huge in Anaheim in America, isn't it? But
Yep.
I went to the one in London. It's like mobs coming towards these meet and greets for people that I've never even heard of. You know, I mean, Ryan's Toys. I don't know if you've heard of Ryan's Toys.
Yeah. I mean, that's number one highest earning, I think, YouTube channel for years. Incredible.
You know, he's like, what is he, 9 or something or whatever? And you know, he $22 million, I think he made in 2019.
Yeah. Ryan's parents they got to start working on Ryan 2.0 because he's going to grow up soon.
Yeah. One thing I was just going to add to something that you said earlier about people wanting an instant return. Well, one of the things that's really important about YouTube and blogging is that it's this wonderful evergreen content.
Yeah.
So unlike paying for an advert or a TV, you know, like an advert in a magazine or something where it's the one issue and that's it. The great thing about you know, working with an influencer or content creator, it keeps on coming, and you know, and I mean, I don't know if you ever remember the YouTube channel called Charlie Bit My Finger. Do you?
Oh, of course. It's number one. It's still probably one of the top downloaded videos. Most viewed videos.
It is incredible. And I looked at it just the other day because I was on another podcast, and I was just looking at seeing how that has now topped 879 million views. It's just insane. So that will still be earning money for the through YouTube. Yeah. Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, look, as we're wrapping up time here, for people that are just starting down this path of exploring influencer marketing, what advice would you give them?
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day. So I would think about, you know, make sure that you are clear about your value proposition, clear about the way that you present your profile online, and make sure that it's consistent on all of the channels so that people can reach you in the right way. But also do a bit of your research, find out what other people, so if you want to have a particular you know, product or service offering, or as an individual, find out who else is in your space and find out what they're doing. Perhaps learn from the best, but whittle out the weakest. I've always believed in research. And yeah, you will look at some of your competitors and reach out to some of those people that are following them, because if they're following them, they have an interest in your area and they could well do that. Be authentic all of the time and make sure that you are always being responsive to the people that take time to follow you, because when you get a follower, treat them like gold dust, because they have chosen to follow you and not anybody else. And you know, if I can be of any help to anybody, you can reach me on all the social media channels. You can direct me a direct message, or you can also buy my book.
That sounds like the most logical step to take. And if they want to connect with you, what's your website? Where can they find more?
So it's www.gordonglenister.com. I'm on obviously all the LinkedIn, and if you're interested in buying the book Influencer Marketing Strategy, you can do so in all major bookstores, including Amazon. So I want to say thank you, Derek, for giving me the chance to have a chat with you today.
Absolutely. And I mean, you've got a podcast. Since we're on podcasts, we know these are podcast
sorry, I've got
listeners.
a podcast.
Yeah, you got to plug your podcast. And
sorry. Yes, I have. Yeah. So the podcast is Influence, the global podcast that shines a spotlight on influencer marketing. And just like your show, we have lots of exciting guests and stuff. So, you know, but it's all about influencer marketing.
Yeah, good. Well, that's fantastic. You know, thank you for being here today, for sharing all that. I mean, you know, it's still a bit of the Wild West. I think there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people think influencer marketing is out of their reach, out of their budget. So I think, you know, people got a lot out of this today. So thank you. Just thank you.
No, thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Now, for all of our listeners, you guys know the drill. This stuff only works if you use it and apply that final essential ingredient called action. If you have never explored influencer marketing, now is the time. There are so many influencers out there in just about every niche imaginable. Be creative, reach out. Don't be shy. I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? You reach out to somebody, what are they going to say? No? Great. I mean, that's how you got to get through some no's before you get to a yes. And so be bold and get out there and start using this. It works. But there's some important messages from this episode, and that is in the expectations that you set, right? If you set expectations that you're going to pay X and immediately X make Y, that's not how this works. So if that's where your headspace is at, go listen to this episode again because you missed some important points. And on that note, that's a wrap for this show, everybody. If you liked what you heard, please leave me a rating review on your favorite podcast platform. And that's it. I'll see you in our next episode.
Thanks for listening to another info-packed episode of the Project Ignite podcast with Gehl.
Any links mentioned, along with an entire transcript of this episode, can be found at projectignite.com/podcast.
And to make sure you never miss another episode, go to iTunes or SoundCloud now and subscribe.